Hello, dear students. Today we are going to critically appreciate one of the poems, Dawn at Puri, written by Jayant Mahapatra. Before moving into the line by line in depth analysis of the poetry, let's have a quick look into the poet. Jayant Mahapatra was born on 22nd of October 1928 in Cuttack, Odisha. He was the first poet to receive Sahitya Academy Award in 1981 and Padma Shri in 2009. So we can imagine the eminence and the esteemed value of his poetry that he was awarded Padma Shri. And he has written approx 27 books of poems, out of which 7 are in Odia, his mother tongue, and there are the major volumes of poetries which are very important, like his work Relationship, Bare Face, Shadow Space, and some of his important poems are Indian Summer and Hunger. Now because you see that in this poem also he is giving you the view of Puri, the culture of Puri, or you can say the voices, the unheard voices from Puri, which he wants to bring to our light, which he wants to surface. And because he is a person from Odisha and Odia background, so of course the theme that he is talking about is, or the place that he has chosen is Puri, the most famous place of or shrine of worship for all the Hindus, and an important place in Odisha itself. And when we compare Mahapatra with Ezekiel or with Parthsarthi, then we can see that there are poets like Parthsarthi, Ezekiel, or Ramanujan who have talked about their place of origin and their cultures and the cities where they have been close to. Like Ezekiel talks about Bombay in Ireland poem, and Parthsarthi talks about Delhi, and when we talk about Ramanujan, then Ramanujan talks about uh, places like Madurai and all in his poems, the city of temples. So you see that all these Indian poets and the current generation of Indian poets, be it Ramanujan or Parthsarthi or Mahapatra, they all can be compared to one another, or Ezekiel, and they all have this disillusionment with life, which is generally reflected in their poems, which is also reflected in this poetry too. So we will deal with that a little bit later, but still a brief overview that the culture of the modern man is something which they do not approve of, or something which they find very hard to bear, the modern civilization, the modern life. And that's why the resonance or the resonating effect of writers like Yeats and Eliot are found in the poetries of Mahapatra also. Now, he was awarded Sahitya Academy and Padma Shri, we know, but he was also awarded many other awards, like in 2009 he received Alan Tate Poetry Prize, and in 2009 only he also received Sark Literary Awards. In 2009 only he also received Ravenshaw University as doctorate, because he was awarded with the honorary doctorate degree from Ravenshaw University in 2009. So there are so many things, so many plumes adding to his glory, to his feathers glory. And apart from all this, now starting with the poetry itself, which will give you the complete overview of what the writer is trying to say about the modern man, modern life, modern situation, and where does religion find its place in it. So let's begin. So here we have the poem in front of us, and as you can see through the line structures, that there is no fixed rhyme scheme or metrical pattern in the poetry, but yes, the poem, when you will read it, creates a rhythmic sound like the breaking of the waves on the seashore, because many lines are written in trochee pattern. So the poet is trying to create the very essence of Puri, which is on the banks of the sea. And that's why the rising and falling of the waves, the action of the waves, the falling of the waves on the seashore can be felt in the rhythm of the poetry, because of the trochee pattern which has been used at times but not in a fixed way. So we cannot say that there is any fixed technical pattern. Coming to the essence of the poetry, the basic overview, what Mahapatra is trying to say to us in this poem. First of all, see, in this modern world, the most important thing and the first and foremost thing that the person is disillusioned with is the faith and religion. Because you see, there are so many places of doubt which is created in the mind of the reasonable person who can reason, and where faith has got no explanation for certain things, for certain dogmas, for certain behaviors, certain taboos that we follow as told to us by the means of faith, by the means of religion that we practice and follow, and we do not know the meaning to it, or basically there is at times no meaning to it. At times there are so many orthodox ideas which should have been shunned long back, but is still being carried, the burden is still being carried, and which makes no sense in this modern world. So starting with Puri, why does the poet chooses this place itself? Because of course Puri is the place of one of the highest esteemed religious values in Hindu culture and mythology. It is one of the four dhams, as we call, and it is the temple of Lord Jagannath, which has been placed, which is situated there, and which is of great eminence value for all the Hindus. They go to visit there, and the Rath Yatra, which is held there, it is all of so much devout religiosity that it contains in itself. But when Mahapatra is looking at Puri and the dawn generally, when we talk about this word dawn, what comes to our mind is the first breaking light of the sun. So it is a kind of positivity which is drawn when this word is uttered, dawn. The light, the positivity, the coming of the sun, the going away of the darkness. But here, both Puri and dawn are not reflected in such a way as people generally see it or perceive it. Puri, he is actually calling out the flaws which are not mentioned in Puri, or the flaws in the morning of Puri, as we can say. Because when you will picture a dawn at Puri, you can picture the beautiful temple and the beaches and the morning of on the beaches, the rising of the sun, and the pictures one will click. But when Mahapatra is seeing it, he's seeing it through a very different lens. He's seeing it through the lens of the natives who are living there. He's seeing it through the lens of the poor and the deprived. He's seeing it through the lens of hunger. He's seeing it through the lens of widowed women who have been outcasted by the society. He's seeing it through the lens of the people who have been downcasted by the society, and what do they really feel about religion, what do they really feel about dawn at Puri, and what is their condition there. So let's begin with one by one, line by line summary of the poetry. Endless crow noises. A skull in the holy sands tilts its empty country towards hunger. White-clad widowed women past the centers of their lives are waiting to enter the great temple. See, endless crow. The very first line is that crows are making noises, endless noise, the crowing of the crows. So you can see that crows, of course, are not creating a kind of ambience here. They are not creating any kind of melody here. But of course, crows are creating some kind of disturbance. The noise is not soothing, it's ominous. And what does it signify? It signifies hunger, which is there. It And then there are holy sands where people come to be cremated, because it is generally of belief that the people who are burned in such eminent religious places will straight away go to the heaven. So people generally come here for cremation, and there on the holy sands they are cremated. And there is one skull which is not totally burnt. The body has not been totally burnt. The skull is left behind, and it shows the situation of the people there. Skull, of course, is signifying death. Skull, of course, is signifying that in our religion we have so many dogmas that we follow, just like being cremated in a holy place like Puri. And people generally equalize it to the fact that once they are cremated there, they will be free, they will get moksha, they will get salvation, they will go to heaven. But what about the ground reality of the country? What about the ground reality of the place, Odisha, there, which is grief stricken, which is generally very poor, and there is hunger spread all around. Then he talks about the women, the widowed women who are dressed in white, who are waiting to enter the temple, and who have passed their majority of the lives waiting to seek God, waiting to seek the love for God. Because in Hindu religion and culture, once a person, or basically a lady, has been widowed, now the situation is changing, of course, but still at many places, when the lady is widowed, she has no other option but to limit her senses. She has to wear white dress, she has to be in love with just God, and she has to limit her all the other senses, starting from even the intake of delicious food is prohibited. So you see uh, the pathos of these women, the struggle of these women, the white clad women who are waiting desperately to enter the temple to seek the love of God, but are unable to enjoy their life here on the earth. So they are this gru- gruesome images that Mahapatra brings up: the image of the skull, the image of hunger, the image of crows crowing, and the image of white clad women trying to enter the temple. And with their austere eyes, stars like those caught in a net. How do they look? They look like as if the eyes are stars which have been caught up in a net. Once you are caught up in a net, of course, you are not free. So their eyes are something which is not able to see each and everything what is around them, but they are limited to their sights, because their vision has been limited, their uh, cravings of life have been limited, their desires have been limited. Just like austere eyes stare like those caught in a net, hanging by the dawn's shining strands of faith, the pale early light catches ruined leprous shells leaning against one another. Now see, one by one the image changes. First the image was of crow crowing on the banks of the, or crowing on the seashore. Now there was a skull in the seashore that he found, which was signifying towards the emptiness of the hollowness of the country and the hunger which is there. And then there was this image of the white clad women, the widowed women who have lived past their lives trying to enter, trying to seek the love of God, trying to enter the temple. Here entering the temple is basically a analogy for entering or seeking the love of God. And their eyes are have no luster. Their eyes are just like rocks or pebbles which have no, you can say, uh, spark in it. And just like the fishes which are caught in this net on the shores of Puri, where They know that there is no hope for them in future. They are now in this net, they are trapped, and there is no way out of this trap. So they are just hanging there by the dawn's light in the morning. When the fishermen catch these fishes, they are hanging there in their net, their eyes showing that there is nothing left for them. And in the same way, the eyes of those fishers are compared to the eyes of these white clad women, whose eyes have no luster left, whose life has no desire left. And then at last he says that what they are clinging to is only shining strands of faith. This faith, this religion, they carry with them, clinging to them, thinking that okay, this will give them ultimate salvation. The love of God will give them ultimate salvation, and they are doomed to do so. They are forced to do so, whatever you may call it, but there is no escape from it. And in the dawn again, he says that the pale early light catches ruined leprous shells leaning against one another, a mass of crouched faces without names. Again, he is comparing the shells on the sea beach to, like when there is a wave and it goes back, it recedes. There are many shells left behind hanging on the sea beaches. Some are fine, some are broken pieces of shells. In the same way, he is saying that just like those broken pieces, those shells which are leprous, in the same way, there are people, the leprous people, the poor, the uh, generally when you will see in front of a temple, you will see huge number of beggars and people struck with leprosy, and people who have all kinds of battles to face in their life, who are so downtrodden and poor that they have nowhere to go. So they just wait outside temple gates, waiting for, begging for alms, waiting for someone to give them something to eat, or uh, just looking for some money, begging for some money, whatever they may get. So again he is comparing the early light, the falling of the dawn, the early rays of the dawn on those shells of the seashore to the leprous beings huddled against one another, waiting outside the temple. And they have no names because they have no identity of their own. They are just living a life which has got no meaning, no purpose at all. They are just living at the mercy of others, waiting outside the temple gates for people to give them something so that their life may go on. There is no one to take care of them. So they are just like these outcasted shells of the sea, leaning against one another, a mass of crouched faces who has got no names, and suddenly breaks out of my hide into the smoky blaze of a sullen solitary pyre that fills my aging mother. And then he is suddenly reminded when he sees the pyre, funeral pyre burning. There is a funeral pyre burning on the banks again. We come to the same fact from where he has started, that there is a skull in the sand. So people are coming on the shores of Puri to be cremated, to be free from this endless cycle of life and death, to attain moksha or salvation. And then he sees this smoky blaze, there is a fire burning, the pyre or the funeral pyre of a body burning there, and it reminds him of his aging mother and the desire of his mother to be cremated here, her last wish to be cremated here, twisting uncertainly like light on the shifting sands. So what is this? The shifting of religious beliefs, the shifting sands, just like the sand of the sea beach. Sometimes it is there, sometimes it is cut by the waves, and it is some of the portion of the sand is taken away by the tides which are coming and touching the seashore. So you see the mud beneath your feet when you are standing on a sea beach is not a solid ground. It is always shifting, it is always shifting in its shape. In the same way, the religion, the belief in religion, the belief in the faith that Parthsarthi is practicing, that is of course Hindu, or Hinduism. He feels that sometimes it is getting hold he is getting hold of it, and at times he is losing it, because till this time he was losing it. He was talking about the hunger of the city. He was talking about how widowed women are treated, and how people struck with leprosy or beggars are treated in front of the temple, and how they are caught up in this hunger and depravity, and this disillusionment of life. So where does religion stand there? Where does God stand there? Where they are getting any kind of hope and expectation from God? But then suddenly he is reminded of his mother's last wish when he sees the funeral pyre burning, and he feels that okay, this is the place where he has to cremate his mother. This is the rituals that he has to also do, because it is the last wishes and the desires of his mother. So of course he is going to fulfill them. Now here, this is the dubious nature of a modern man. They know that a thing is not right, but then again they are going to do the same thing. If you do not believe in these dogmas and religion, and these principles that the faith you are following is teaching you, you must shun them. But no, he is again reminded that his mother has this last wish to be cremated here, and he has to do so to keep his mother's promise. So he compares his situation to the shifting sands, to the changing attitude of modern man on the banks of the river. So this is all about the poetry, a very hard-hitting satire on the complexity of human life and the complexity of religion and faith that we follow. So that was all about this poetry. I'm sure you all have understood it. If yes, then please don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment.